I would like also to thank Camille Morino and Iwona Blazwick for inviting me to this wonderful symposium. And also many thanks to Sofia Victorino and her colleague Jane Scarth from the public program. Okay, I will talk about the collection, and I'm sorry about my voice. I have a cold. However, I will talk about the collection and about the feminist avant-garde. So the SAMMLUNG VERBUND collection was founded in 2004, 30 years ago, by the leading Austrian electricity corporation. And when I was appointed to build up a collection of contemporary art by VERBUND, at VERBUND, one thing was very important for me, to have a free hand in decision making, and VERBUND agreed to it. So I did my research, and in the course of this research I discovered something interesting. In an old catalogue of the 70s I found Renate Eisenegger's work. The artist had no homepage, no gallery and no publications. However, I found her phone number and asked her if she still had the works from the 70s. The artist answered, "Oh, in 40 years nobody has asked for it. I will have a look in my loft." The day after, I called her again and she said, "Yes, everything is fine, well wrapped, but are you sure you're interested in my work?" I was quite astonished that she was surprised about my interest. A week later, I visited her at her studio in Switzerland, in Schaffhausen, and we discussed her feminist work she created in the 70s and the prices. Her prices, of course, were too low. I told her she had to raise her prices because her photographs are vintages and unique pieces. On the way back to Vienna, I asked myself, why are these great photographs worth almost nothing after 40 years? Why do artists such as Renate Eisenegger, and she is definitely not the only one, have no self-confidence in her work? One of the reasons that feminist works from the 70s have almost no value is because they didn't fit into a specific category. And art history operates with specific terms such as constructivism, surrealism, or Vienna actionism. So I wanted to create a term which indicates the pioneering position those women artists have. I decided to coin the term feminist and feminist avant-garde and used it as a theme for the collection. Another theme for the collection is works about the perception of spaces and places. After two collection presentations, one at the Viennese MAC in 2007 and another one a year after at the Museum of Modern Art in Istanbul, I managed to do our first group show about the feminist avant-garde at the Galleria Nazionale d'Arte Moderna in Roma. This was in 2010. Now the collection holds 600 feminist works from the 70s by almost 50 women artists. The feminist avant-garde show was organized as a tour with 10 venues. After Rome, it was seen in Madrid, in Brussels, in Sweden, in Germany at the Hamburger Kunsthalle, and recently in London at the Photographers Gallery. In May this year, we are open the show in Vienna at the MOMOG, and after it goes to ZKM in Karlsruhe, to Finland, to Switzerland. I am pleased that especially the young audience are very interested in this historical tour about the 70s. To produce scholarly publication is one of my central goals for the collection. Here you see 4 monographs on women artists. So the Austrian artist Birgit Jürgensen and the Austrian artist Renate Bertelmann. Those are the first monographs. So Renate Bertelmann is now 70 years old, and this is the first monograph in English. So, and I worked with Cindy Sherman on her catalogue raisonné, on the very early works she did before she did the famous film stills. And then we made a book, the first publication in German, and also one is in English on Francesca Woodman. In the 70s, it was very difficult for women artists to get a show or even be represented by a gallery. When a group show was organized, women artists were simply excluded. For example, the Austrian artist Renate Bertelmann told me that in the 70s she was once talking with a male gallery owner if she could exhibit at his gallery. And he answered, "Why should you have a show? You're married anyway." Nice, hmm? A new generation of young women artists realized in Europe and in the States, if you do not want to be isolated, they have to claim their terrain. So they set up action committees, edited journals and magazines, organized festivals, symposia and conferences, and founded their own galleries. For example, in 1970, Margaret Harrison founded the London Women's Liberation Art Group. 1 year later, where we at Black Women Artists were founded. Mary Beth Adelson, for example, organized 1972 the Conference of Women in the Visual Arts in Washington. This was the first gathering of women artists from the West and East Coast. About 300 women artists attended. In the same year, the Air Gallery was founded in New York, only for women artists. So in the front you see Anna Mendieta, in the back, for example, Nancy Spiro. A year later, the curator, Lucy Lippert, curated the first show in the United States only with women artists. By the way, through this exhibition shot, I found works by Ulrike Rosenbach and Rita Meyer, and also those two artists forgot about their work. So I had to remind them, and they had to look after this and to find out, and then we acquired it for the collection. Another women's show was organized by Valley Export in Vienna in the International Women's Year in 1975. Export called her show Magna, Feminism and Creativity. What is very striking about the feminist avant-garde is that many women artists took over similar strategies without knowing each other's work. I would like now to draw 5 comparisons. So, for example, it's impossible that the artist Katalin Ladig knew the work by Anna Mendieta, because Anna Mendieta's work was a student work, and only the estate published it in 1970. Also, I doubt that Alexis Hunter knew the work by Katalin Ladig, and also Katalin Ladig didn't know the work by Alexis Hunter. So Renate Bertelmann could not know the work by Francesca Woodman, because her first show was in the 90s, and the publication. Also, it's interesting to see the formal similarities by the works of Hannah Wilke and Orlan. And from my point of view, there has to be a lot of research to make in terms of formal strategies of the women feminist artists, because their subject matter is so strong. So art history didn't focus too much on formal strategies. Also, I doubt that Martha Wilson knew the work by the Austrian artist Frédéric Petzold. So, what was the subject matter of the feminist avant-garde? A central credo of the women's movement was the personal is political, and therefore relevant to public discourse. New themes were discussed for the first time in public: pregnancy, childbirth, motherhood, housewife sexuality, partnership, beauty standards, rape, and female body. Many artists took up these issues in their work. So let me discuss 4 topics. First, domestic agenda. The Austrian artist Birgit Jürgensen depicts herself wearing an iron stove as an apron. With the bread in the stove, Jürgensen is alluding to the saying, to have a bun in the oven. Helene Chadwick constructed a kitchen object she is wearing over her body. In her drawing, Jürgensen stages a symbiosis between housewife and table. Valley Export gives allusion to traditional iconography of Madonna, and Renate Eisenegger is ironing the floor of a hallway. The Viennese artist Karin Mack interpreted ironing as a contemplative practice, and the Brazil artist Letícia das Parente shows a dressed lady being ironed by her maid. Everyday routines of women's lives, such as ironing or scrubbing the floor, was discussed within the artworks. Second, the visualization of being locked up and the act of breaking out. Several artists use the metaphor of the cage to express their sense of being locked up. Renate Eisenegger's 8 photographs, the artist I was talking on the beginning, deal with isolation. The artists wrap their faces and bodies in various kinds of cocoons. You see Donna Hannens, Françoise Janicot, Annegret Solter, and again Renate Eisenegger. Annegret Solter. And Margot Bilz, an Austrian artist, and Elaine Schemmelt. When I asked her what was the idea, why you made this work, she answered me, the work was made in response to a series of lectures given by the head of the sculpture department at the Slade School of Art in London. In one of the lectures, he stated that a woman could not function as both an artist and a woman. My work was a sort of silent protest, she said. The third topic which is relevant is sexuality. One of the main goals of feminist movement was the sexual liberation of women. The introduction of the contraceptive pill in the mid-60s gave women more control over their fertility. Many feminist artists addressed this new freedom, but they also highlighted the oppression of female sexuality and the sexual objectification of women. In her little-known photo collages, Penny Slinger confronted the old subject-object dynamic. The artist is dressed in a wedding cake costume with her legs sprayed white. In front of her vulva, she places a suggestive eye. The title I See You indicates the vulva not anymore as a passive organ, but rather becoming an active organ that has power over the male viewer. And finally, the fourth relevant topic was role play. Role play seemed to be the appropriate tool to question cliches and stereotypes. So what is also very interesting is that you have a lot of well-known artists like Eleanor Antin or Aline Hirschman, but who knows Marcella Campagnano, who did also in the very early 70s a lot of role plays. So I think what is wonderful of all this gathering together, the 50 artists of the feminist avant-garde, that you have a mixture of very well-known artists like also Cindy Sherman and Martha Wilson, but also a lot of artists you can discover. And when we had the first show in 2010 in Rome, Martha Wilson surprisingly didn't know the works by Cindy Sherman, the very early works of the bus riders. So she was surprised that, and they were meeting each other at this time, but since Cindy has not shown it at that time, so they didn't know each other, but did similar works. So that's really very interesting. So in the 70s, the new media such as film, video and photography, as well as performance came up. And especially the media of photography allowed women artists to work much more spontaneously. And also the distance, it was a free media because it had no history, like the history of painting, which is very male-dominated. So what are the criteria of an avant-garde movement? I would like to read a definition. The avant-garde are artists or works that are experimental, radical, or unorthodox with respect to art, culture, and society. The avant-garde art is non-traditional, aesthetic, innovative, and initial unacceptable. The avant-garde also promotes radical social reforms, quote end. So like each avant-garde, the feminist women artists did something very new in art history. For the first time, they collectively created a new iconography of women from a female perspective. So this is, in my point of view, in a very collectively way, really the first time in the 70s. The art critic Lawrence Alloway declared in 76, I quote, the women's movement in art can be considered as an avant-garde because its members are united by a desire to change the existing social forms of the art world, quote end. However, Alloway's observation that the feminist art movement of the 70s had all the makings of avant-garde has unfortunately largely gone unheeded. It seems it exists a kind of blind spot in art history. If you look up at Wikipedia the term avant-garde, you find many avant-garde movements, but you will have noticed there is no reference to the term feminism. Now, to conclude, my overall goal in the collection is to raise the status of feminist avant-garde in the world of art history. Hopefully, in the future, feminist avant-garde will receive the same recognition as the other avant-garde movements. Thank you.